It's going to be very telling what the music industry does following this Chris Brown domestic violence documentary. It was just announced today that Chris Brown is the subject of a new documentary from Investigation Discovery, and it is called Chris Brown, A History of Violence. This documentary kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think any of us were expecting it. It premieres on October 27th, and the documentary promises to show Chris Brown's history of violence, violence against women, as well as new allegations from an accuser. This comes out at the same time that Chris Brown is arguably the biggest R&B male artist in the world. So I think it's going to bring up a lot of very complicated conversations in the music industry. Let's take a look at the trailer and the press release for the documentary and make some predictions on how this can affect the music industry as well as fans.
I'm sure the girls want to know a couple more questions and things.
For the young ladies, I mean, what's up, man? You got a girl or what?
Nah, I'm keeping my options open, so y'all be checking for me, you know what I'm saying?
Uh-oh.
Thank you so much.
That's the type of stuff will get you in trouble, player. Chris Brown is the name. Get used to that right there.
Chris Brown's an amazing and talented musician, but let's call a thing a thing. He's an abuser of women, consistently, unapologetically.
Oh my God! Mom, how does it feel? You feel like a man?
Did Chris pull a gun on that girl?
When is your hearing for your restraining order?
There's a long list of various different women.
Being pretty upset. Are you sure you don't really call victims advocates have them come talk to you?
Who've accused Chris Brown of assaulting them.
Singer Chris Brown has been detained in an alleged case of rape.
He has an audience full of assault deniers.
No, I have not spoken about this matter publicly, but that's the only way that he can be stopped.
The Hollywood Reporter broke the story about the documentary, and this is what the article says. How a troubled pop artist with such an infamous public record can maintain his superstar status and legions of fans. That's the subject of the documentary, Chris Brown, A History of Violence. When you watch the trailer, you can see that the documentary wants to show a history of violence, a pattern of violence, starting from when Chris Brown assaulted Rihanna in 2009. They were dating at the time. It then shows other romantic partners, including Karrueche Tran, who had a restraining order against him. What's most shocking is that there's a new accuser, new allegation, someone that it looks like we don't know. She's coming forward and saying that she was a victim of Chris's violence. This is what the accuser says. I have not spoken about this matter publicly, but that's the only way he can be stopped. I think that's the most surprising part. I mean, no one really expected a Chris Brown documentary. Everyone's talking about Diddy, and it seems to be about canceling Diddy right now. So I didn't even hear that a Chris Brown documentary was happening. This Chris Brown documentary comes from the same people who did Quiet on the Set. That was the expose about Nickelodeon and the abusive environment that happened there. I've been hearing through the industry grapevine that there's several Diddy documentaries coming out. Apparently, this same team is also working on one about Sean Puffy Combs. So that kind of made sense with what's going on in the headlines. But I haven't heard anything about a Chris Brown expose or any new allegations. So I think this is shocking across the board. So this is the log line to the documentary. A log line is basically a summary of like a TV show or a film, and Variety ran the log line, so I'm just going to share it with you. Chris Brown, A History of Violence, will chart Chris Brown's past all the way back to his troubled childhood, explores the lasting impact of the cycle of abuse, and poses the question, How does a man with such a violent public record maintain his superstar status? With expert and cultural commentary layered throughout, the documentary provides thoughtful reflections into each survivor's experience and the psychological destruction in the aftermath of their abuse. So we don't know what this documentary is going to reveal outside of what's already been publicly shared in Chris's past. But I do think for a lot of fans, maybe the fans who were too young to remember like 2009 and Chris's early troubles when it came to domestic violence and also just his interactions with women, this may be an eye-opening documentary. So I'm going to be honest, behind the scenes, the music industry, the entertainment industry has a very, let's say, complicated relationship when it comes to Chris Brown. Back in 2009, after the Rihanna incident, there are a lot of companies, brands, professionals that honestly just don't want to work with Chris. They see him as a liability. They see him as something that could affect their public image. So there's a reason certain stages Chris just doesn't perform on. There's certain rooms and parties that he's never going to get an invite to. For a celebrity of his stature, someone who is arguably good looking, talented, I mean, he seems to check all the boxes. You notice he doesn't do like these big brand deals the way a lot of his contemporaries do. And there's a reason for that. I think that said, there is a contingent of people who see Chris as this amazing redemption story. He made mistakes when he was younger. If you followed Chris's history, and it looks like this documentary may delve into it, he talks about being a victim of abuse, witnessing his mother's domestic abuse with her partners and how that shaped or traumatized him as a young person. So in many ways, he was just recreating the cycle of abuse that was normal to him. There's a lot of people who'll say, look, he was young. He made a mistake and he learned his lesson. And that's why you see a lot of prominent people in the music business, a lot of men as well as women, they come out to support Chris Brown. I've heard him being called the GOAT, especially of young R&B, that he has no competitors. He sells out arenas. You see his fans and all those meet and greets, like they're willing to pay $1,000 just to have a picture with him. And I think a big part of that is his fans specifically feel this closeness to him. It's almost like the world tried to cancel Chris, but we're still here. So I think from a fan perspective, it's very easy to explain why they have such an affinity towards Chris, outside of just his talent and the fact that he can sing and he can dance and he has charisma. But I do think that they feel an emotional closeness. In many ways, the music industry has sort of let the market dictate how to deal with Chris. Because Chris can sell out arenas, he's being booked to do arenas. Because fans are actively streaming his music, no one's going to deplatform him. No label's going to drop him. I don't think a lot of people are going to cancel Chris based upon old allegations. The past is the past. He seems to have moved on. What could really hurt him is a new accuser. We don't know what this person is going to say. We don't know if this is going to be the impetus to then launch investigations on the legal front. It becomes harder to ignore abuse and harassment and these type of things when the law gets involved. So we don't know what this person is going to say. Are they speaking to the authorities? Have they spoken to them already? All of that is going to be revealed. Furthermore, we don't know if this documentary and what this new accuser says is going to spark other accusations coming forward. In the case of Diddy, Cassie's lawsuit opened up the floodgates, and all of a sudden, we saw women from his past, from his present, all the way going back to him being in college, coming forward with allegations. I think when it comes to the music business, it's one thing to ignore the past, because I think people can wrap their mind around the fact that people make mistakes, people grow up. Hopefully they get therapy, they go on their journey of just sort of self-introspection and self-discovery. but it's really hard to ignore if accusations are happening in the present. Is this person a current threat to anyone's safety? Is their brand going to affect me in some way? That's the way that the music industry thinks. It's also more complex with talking about Chris Brown. Unlike R. Kelly and Diddy, Chris Brown is still at the top of his game. We can argue that it's Chris Brown and Usher are probably the two biggest male R&B stars. One obviously tapping into nostalgia in the past, and one being a current hit maker. Everyone wants Chris on their record. It doesn't matter if you're even someone like a Drake, you want a Chris Brown collaboration. He makes hit records. So let's say that this documentary comes out, they talk about Chris's past and new accusations. What does the industry do? Because someone like R. Kelly or Puff, you can say, you know what, their music really isn't being played that much in heavy rotation. With Puff, you do have the ancillary artists like Biggie and all the bad boy artists, but putting them to the side, as solo artists, R. Kelly and Puffy are not current hit makers. So it's easier from a music business perspective to kind of press delete because it doesn't really affect the current bottom line. It's not the same with Chris Brown. So I think the best thing is just to wait, watch the documentary. Chris Brown, A History of Violence airs on October 27th. I'm sure everyone will be talking about it. I'm going to try to watch, though, the whole documentary because I know social media is going to chop up the clips. But I do think something as serious as Chris Brown, allegations of domestic violence and abuse and new accusations, I do want to watch it like in its entirety to make sure I'm understanding all of the context. But I think that's all we can do is watch the documentary, see what unfolds, and I think we can go from there. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Will you be watching this new Chris Brown documentary? Do you think this is going to change the way you personally feel about him or how you're going to deal with his music? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.